Today we are going to have the first class in React, and you're going to understand React from scratch, from the very perspective of how an React library helps us. So I have given a very simple HTML here. Uh, I assume people understand HTML, but those who don't understand, HTML is a very simple hypertext markup language, which was invented as soon as we got the internet. And the concept of HTML was taken from the printing presses where we print headlines, and to print the headlines, we use different markers. To print the paragraph under the headlines, we use a different markup. So we have a markup language in the printers when we print the newspapers, right? Similarly, we have a markup language here in HTML, which is known as a hypertext markup language, and it simply tells that this is the head marker where I will have a title marker with simple name list. And one important thing is that in HTML you should have, when you open a tag, you have to close the tag. Like I opened a head tag, then I have to close with the head tag, which indicates that this is ending here. And then we have a body tag, and then we have header one list of names. Then UL is unordered list. So this unordered list is a tag which I'm opening and I'm closing this, and this will make appear this as a list. And I'm printing the first element of the list, Yalai Anil, list John, list Mary. So it is closed with a closing tag. Now, if I want to see this, how would it appear, right? See, this is appearing this way. List of names is, capital almost, because I'm putting this as the header. I'm not going to talk about colors because I want to keep this focused on why you want to react. So title, I give simple name list, and then we have put a list of names. The first name is Anil, the second name is John, the third name is Mary, fourth name is Sarah, and then we have date. Now, it is easy to display this as index.html. And what's happening here is that I'm just opening a file which is there locally uh, on the browser. But what exactly happens is in a real world is that the web server, we as a client give a request to web server, HTTP request, and then we get a response. And the response, we will get a index.html like this. This is about index.html. Now, the question is that how do I use the React API to do this job? Let's talk only of that. I'm not going to talk more about React framework. I want to keep things simple first. So my aim is to, you know, uh, instead of I coding this index.html like this, I want the React API to do this. But your question is like, oh, if we can do this in such a simple way, why do we need React API to do this? I will come to that later, but I will answer that question. So this is your index.html. Now, let's think of what React API is to use here. So now what you see here is a pure React API, which is going to, do exactly what is your HTML is doing, right? This is a pure React code where we are calling a function name list. And this is an array. Constant names is equal to array, the same names. Then what we'll do is we are creating, so this is the index.html, right? We call this as elements. These are the elements of the HTML hypertext markup language. So we are going to, with the React API, we're going to create all these elements. How do we create all these elements? Is that we say react.create element, where we say, this is my hypertext markup language tag, right? H1. And in the H1 tag, I should have list of names, which means I'm creating this. I'm going to have a head tag, sorry, here, H1 tag with a list of names. And then I'm also, so what I'm going to do is that uh, I'm also going to create a list, which is an array, right? I'm going to create H1 with list of names. Then I'm going to create element. Here I missed the top one, the title. I should have added that, but I'm not adding it. So right now we have array, then we have created a div here. And why we created a div? Because you don't have a div here, but you have created there a div. That I will tell you later. Why? Now we created element H1, list of names. Then we created another element, which is the tag, right? HTML tags, unordered list. Now this needs your attention. Names.map. What exactly we are doing here? So the names.map is referring the array here, and it is indexing. And then it is, creating this equivalent to doing this. But after we do this, we have to put in ordered list, right? So When we do this, we are going to push this whole array in the ordered list. That's what the names.map is doing. Now, lastly, we have to create every HTML should have a root element. So we are creating a root element here. And then after doing all this, we are going to render from the root the name list. So what we did, see, this is having a root, right? Doc type HTML, HTML/HTML is the root. Then we have head, which is closing. Then we have body. Inside the body, we have list of names. Then we have unordered list. We're trying to use React API to do this. That's why we wrote a JavaScript for this one. But the question now is, how do I run this JavaScript? Okay, so in order to run a JavaScript, that means I need to mount this React to run it. So what we did, I'm just reiterating or summarizing so that it gives more clarity to your understanding. We started with the index.html, hypertext markup language. We know that it should have a root element, right? /HTML. So remember that a, a HTML document has a HTML root, then it has a header, and it has body, right? And then it closes /HTML. So this, if we open in a browser as it is going to display a list of names. Where is that list of names? We displayed. It's here. Let's try to display that. Index. Yeah, it's a simple name list using HTML. Then we wanted to do this through React API. We did this through React API, but we need this as JavaScript. Now, in order for us to run this, how will you run it? So now I built HTML, and inside the HTML, I'm running the React APIs, and the React API JavaScript is here. It is between the script tags. So if you want to run a JavaScript inside HTML, you have to put the script tags. This is the opening script and this is the closing script. Now I'm taking the name CS as array, and it's having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 arrays. I'm going to create the first React element div. I'll tell you why I'm creating div. Then the h1 list of names, header 1, which is exactly like here, header 1. And then I am creating the unordered list here, the element unordered list, and then names.map. Now observe here that names is the array. So I'm mapping this array by using the API, React API names.map. What exactly it does? So it gives a name and index. Index is for the map to go through each element of the array to have a counter. You keep an index, and what it does is, let's say it goes to the first element, then it puts like then it puts the key index, and then it puts the name Anil. So this is what the names.map is doing. Now observe here is that we are using lambda expression here, which means we are using functional programming. Uh, Anonymous, we are we are declaring and then also defining and running that function here. That's by using lambda. Names.map name index rake.create element. So key indexes, it will give the index as 0, 1, 2 or something like that. It will run this. It is also creating a root element, and then it's doing a root dot render. So we took index.html. Then we discussed that we can use APIs to do that. So that's why we wrote a JavaScript to do that. But this JavaScript should be put inside in HTML. We can't run this independently, so that's why we made this JavaScript. We close the script. Now we run this. Once I go here, I wrote nail display just using React, right? When I run this, what happens? It's exactly displaying what I was doing in the index.html. What did I do? I used the React APIs instead of index.html to display the list of names. and I got the list of names. So I just displayed how to use React API. I'm not come to anything else like maintaining the states or something, where to which I'll come gradually. You need to realize that how we are using the React library here. You can see this, right? We are using React development.js. It's a script which we are including. We're using React DOM development.js, which is also a script. So this is the way we include our scripts inside our HTML. Now the question here comes is that, instead of using this React APIs directly like this, uh, how do I instruct to the browser to use the React APIs indirectly? How do I do that? Now, so far we did this example with the pure React API, but we made sure that the JavaScript which we have made with the React APIs gets executed by putting this inside HTML. And we did just to explain you very quickly what we did is that we created the elements, div we created, then we created a list of names, then we created another list, and we use this array names dot map index to go through each element and create the list and the key and index, right? So we were successfully using React API. Now, since we are taking this one step at a time, first we use only HTML. Second, now we use only React. We just put JavaScript. Now we put this JavaScript inside HTML and we ran this and then we were able to produce the names. Now comes further to simplify is that instead of me writing these APIs each time, like React.create element and all that, how do I simplify one step further? To simplify one step further, we have something known as JavaScript XML, JavaScript extension of JavaScript XML, which allows us to put HTML-like language inside the script. So all you see this HTML tag and all, you're putting inside HTML. But you can't put HTML tags inside a script. It's not going to allow it, right? So for us to make that allow, what we have done is that we have used JSX here. So Babel allows you to compile the JSX and convert that into React APIs. That is the purpose of this Babel script, right? Babel.js. And we are, everything is same except now this part is changed. We are saying constant app is it, and then we are putting actual div tag rather than create element div, right? Here how we're creating a div, we create element div that we are writing. We are just displaying this list of names. And then we are putting the directly tag unordered list, right? And then we have put the key index. We are still using the API names.map. Again, this is the React API, but we are using only this part in React API. We are not using everything. After doing all this, we are creating a root element. Again, this is React API. This is all whatever comes after this arrow mark, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, this is putting in the braces, right? It is opened and closed. Inside that, you are saying names.map. So I do understand it's somewhat difficult to remember this syntax and code rather than this one. This one is very easy. You know that names.map is going to refer to the array names and it's going to map that into list key value pairs. So the advantage here is that I have been able to use HTML tags inside a script, right? And then I'm able to use list key index. So let's try to run this. Let's see. See, we are getting this list of names. Anil, John, Mary, Sarah, David, right? David. Now, list of names, names.map, name index, list key index, name, UI, and then we did this. So this is all important until this point of we were discussing of how we use React APIs instead of pure HTML, and after using React API, how do we use JSX or JavaScript XML? JavaScript XML, this is when we use inside the script that's called as JavaScript XML. Now what? So after using JSX inside this, we use the Babel to compile so that it gets converted to React API. Now, since React needs the states, to maintain, uh, we will try to maintain the state of the names list here. We're not going to talk about adding or deleting here. We're going to simply only start talking of maintaining states. So what we do in our app.js is that we declare this as a React component app, and then we call the constructor props, then we call to the props, and then we start maintaining an initial state, which is a names array. And then when we render this list of names, again, what we are doing here is that we are including the JSX, which is going to help us include the HTML tags inside the JavaScript. And then we are using the unordered list. Then we say this dot state dot names dot map name index key name li. And then we have unordered list, and then we have the div tag. So this is under render function. Now the question comes here is that all this time we were talking of render, but we said root.render app, right? Here also we said root.render app because you need to render in the React API. But if you see the pure index.html, there's nothing like render. And when we started using the React APIs, we started using render. Then we used JCX also, we used the render root.render app. Similarly, when you start using states, you will say root.render app. And you actually define the render here. The render, what exactly it does is that so we are doing a render, but we are calling the render function here. And this render is going to return the JSX. So the very important point you have to remember here is that when you start adding the states, you also have to call render, right? So now we have a React app which is maintaining the state here, and we have the names of the array. Now two questions come here is we have two renders. One is root.render app, and then we're actually calling here a render function. That is quite confusing now because all this time things seems to be easy because we know how to use the React API, and then we know how to use the JavaScript XML, which is helps us to code HTML like things inside the script. But the moment we introduce the state, things looks very complex here, right? Now, one thing we have to remember is that for the browser understands HTML document by something known as document object model, which is nothing but a tree, the real tree of the root HTML. Let's go to index.html. So in the tree, the root is HTML, then comes the head, then comes the title, then comes the body, and then you have elements inside this body, right? H1, UL, and all. So this is the document object model which the browsers have. And it's because the browsers understand document object model, they are able to display the HTML document for us. That's called as a real document object model. But what React does is that it prepares a virtual document object model. What exactly this means is that inside this, we are also preparing the HTML tags using JSX. Now we have to make this appear in the real DOM. This is the virtual DOM. We have to make this appear in the real DOM. How do you do that? That is where we have to call the render. When you call the render and we say return, these all actually join the actual DOM. Now, where is the advantage for us when we use React? Uh, the page is already there. We are going to only update this page with what is exactly changed. So what is exactly changed is updated in the page by merging the virtual DOM with real DOM, and that is done asynchronously in terms of batch. That means it's once. We have 10 changes, all the 10 changes are batched and then they are updated. So this is the way the React works for you. So just to summarize that, we call this app so that we are going to introduce all whatever is done in the HTML page under the root document. So that's why we have to call root.render app, and whatever UI has to update, that is there under this render. So that is why we have to call the render to put what is appearing on the UI here, which will put all this whatever you have displayed. So this all gets converted into React API, but those APIs, whatever the element they produce, HTML element, they have to be put under root wherever the div tag is there. The div tag has to be placed properly, right? So that is where the render works. So if you see this, You have the div tag here, and then your list of names and all that stuff. How do we manage to put whatever is there in this UI under the div tag, and the div tag goes under root, right? We need a div ID is equal to root and slash div. Until we do this div ID is equal to root slash div, React does not work for us. So everything, whatever we do, we have done in the body, right? So that has to come under this div ID is equal to root. Like we have script and we have all this. This has to come under index.html, the real term. So that is where it's going to help us by calling this render method. So this is a simple attempt for me to make understand how do you maintain the states. So we are trying to maintain the states here, names Anil, John. And when we make components like the child of child, which may be, adding the names like Anil, John, Mary, and all. But for that, we have to pass the props from the parent to the child, and that child will pass it to its child. So that is the way, DOM is one way, as I've put in the links there. Uh, so we have two types of render. One is the basic render, which puts everything under the root element, and then we have render for your JSX, which will make the UI appearance here. And this helps you to explain how we are using React API, how we are using JSX, how we are maintaining the states. I will come up with another episode of how do you maintain the props. That means in this one, we will not only maintain the props or states, but if anything new is added, how do you reflect that, by using components. We'll use two components here in my next episode. One is how do you add an element to this list. The one is how do you delete the element. But now, if you like my video, please subscribe my channel and hit the like button. Thank you.